Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hi friends, we're here. This is going up a few days late, but I didn't want to rush myself through my rereads of these books because it is truly my favorite part of the year when I've accumulated these books like treasures. Both physically and just in my heart, these books that I've been just gushing over this year, which none of them are going to be a surprise, although I am surprised by which my number one book is, which you may or may not have known already. On my Instagram, I did share the tracking as I was doing it. We'll get into the more details about how I picked these and everything. I am going to start with some year-end stats. I think previously I've done these videos separately, but we're going to squish it all together today. I'm resigned that this will be a nice, long, epic video that has all of the Book Refuge details for 2023. And just get yourself a snack, get yourself a drink. Maybe you'll need to watch it in parts. Watch it while you're doing your New Year's workouts, whatever you're doing, but settle in because I'm so excited to go over the details. All right, so my year-end stats. I'm so excited. Here's my pretty book journal here. I had bought these cool stickers, which you can find in the video I'm going to put up about journaling. I'll have links to all my stickers and everything. I don't know when that video is going up because it's just kind of an extra right now. I have a lot of year-end and beginning of the year stuff, but I made these. There are these stickers you can buy where you put your little bookshelf. So I put all my favorites. They're not in order on this one. I just put all my favorites on this little bookshelf. It's so cute. So I read 546 books, and that was 180,096 pages, and that averaged about 494 pages per day. So this was actually less books than last year, but I'm honestly I don't need to read more than I did before. I've read less books than the last 2 years, but I feel more consistent with what I have. And I've shared before why that is. I've read less books because with Patreon, it takes a good chunk of my time to do the annotations and everything. So that's just eaten up some of my extra reading time, but I don't mind. I still know that I read many more than others, and that's, 1.75 books per day. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. The formats of these books were, I read 176 physical books, 252 ebooks, 147 audiobooks. That is awesome. It makes me so happy. And 99 arcs. I wish I'd squeezed one more arc in there to make it 100, but that's cool. And you will notice a little bit of disparity. I've shared this. I do double count when I do this. If I'm listening and following along, I count it as both. The ratings of these books were 40 6-star reads, 103 5 stars, 65 4.5 stars, 190 4 stars, 66 3.5, 54 that were 3, 12 that were 2.5, 8 that were 2 star, 0 that were 1 star. I don't really rate books 1 star, and 8 DNFs. So that's how that breaks down. Just a little note, it says 46 stars, but I reread those books. So we'll talk about the ones I gave 6 stars to. There's actually 20 books that I gave 6 stars to, but this is the I reread them, so they're rated multiple times. The subgenre breakdown was 186 contemporary, 64 fantasy, 82 dark, 51 fan fictions. I'm so happy. I love it. 24 sci-fi, 64 historical romance, 30 paranormal, 19 erotic, 16 dystopian, and 2 that were romantic suspense. And I only list them as romantic suspense if they weren't more focused on romance. So they really were more of a mystery book than they were a romance. And then I wasn't necessarily doing this by stats, although I do kind of keep track of this. I just picked 8 of my favorite tropes that I was drawn to this year, ones that showed up in my top 5 the most, but also a few that they might not have showed up in my favorites, but I was drawn to them. so they weren't listed as much, but I really wanted them. And the ones that were for sure the top was Fated Mates. I always have a lot of Fated Mates because that usually is both fantasy and like paranormal and sci-fi usually have a lot of Fated Mates included in them. Age Gap. Consistently, Age Gap is my top. I just love it. Okay, I just love it. I love it whether the woman's older or the man's older. I love an age gap. I'm here for it. Forced proximity. Forced proximity, I've said, is just kind of a prerequisite for romance. Like, you're going to find it in most scenarios because the people got to be around each other to fall in love. So that makes sense. Mafia romance. That's always going to be a favorite. Cowboy romance. This is still kind of a holdover from last year, but I found some nice new cowboys this year as well. Single parents. You are about to see that in my top books. My top, I think 6 of the top 10, 5 or 6 of the top 10 are all single parents. I love it. Love it so much. Disability rep. I love whenever I see that. However I see that, I think it's great to see all different kinds of disabilities, whether they're like mental or physical or sometimes even like emotional ones like PTSD or things like that. I love reading about how people overcome obstacles. And then monster. I'm always going to have a soft side for monster romance. It's just one of my favorites because I love that sometimes the biggest, ugliest monsters can be the sweetest heroes or heroines for that fact, for sure. So yeah, that is me by the stats. Now let's get to the part that you're all waiting for. The part maybe some of you skipped right to, which I completely understand. Let us go over my favorites of the year. So I do have 8 books to share, 9 books to share that are the honorable mentions. So to explain a little bit, sorry. Let's see if I still have a picture of this, but this is the criteria for how I rated my 6-star books. So throughout the year, I have a 6-star rating scale. I talk about this obviously often because it comes up a lot. And I started this back in 2019 to help myself differentiate my favorite books. As you can tell from this, I give a lot of books 5 stars, right? There was over 100 books that I gave 5 stars to, ones that I loved. I like to hand out 5 stars like candy. If a story was great, if it did the things I wanted it to do, if it was addictive, if it was swoony, if the spice was used in the right way, it's a 5-star read. I'm not picky with it. But what I came across in 2019, being a booktuber and a rater and a little bit of a critic about books, is I wanted to freely give 5 stars, but I also needed a way to differentiate my favorites. And I know that a few of you have now taken this on either because you've seen me do it or other people do it. I first saw Bethany from Bookish-Minded. Bethany, it's been a while since I watched her channel, pardon me, but she was who I first saw do this, and I thought it was brilliant. So that's where the 6-star stuff came from. And then in 2020, or was it 2019? It was 2019 now? Okay, yeah, it was 2019, because when I decided to do the 6-star thing, I reread the books that are my favorites. So once I came across the 6-star thing, the 6-star rating plan, I spend December rereading my favorite books. Again, for some of you, this is redundant. Please feel free to skip ahead to the actual, whatever. But what I decided to do to help me pick that is I made a little rating scale on top of this. So all of these books that I'm going to talk about either stayed a 6-star read. Some of them this year did go back to a 5-star, which it's not like I'm changing my rating anywhere else because these books are already all rated 5 stars on Goodreads. It's just some of them upon reread, they don't hold up as well. Maybe now that I know all the secrets, they didn't hit me as hard. I'm a very emotional reader. So if something surprises me or kicks me in the gut, I generally will give it like a favorite, but then when I revisit it, I'm like, oh, well, this doesn't hold up without the shock value. There's all these different things. So I made this list of things and I rate them 1 through 10 based on that. So this year I rated on emotional impact, the character arcs of both of the main characters, whether that was a hero and a heroine, or in this case, I have 2 books that are romance, so rating them that way. And then I rated on the plot and like how the tropes were used, like if they were used in a unique or good way or I liked it. I rated on the conflict in the third act, how I felt that it played out, if it was just shoehorned in there or if it was well. And then a new thing I added this year was, does the spice match the characters? Did the author just put things in there to be sensational, or were they there because they created characters who would love this way, who would be intimate this way, which is very important to me. And then finally, I would do just how addictive was the book. And then I have a little bonus point section that I just get to assign if I'm like, I want this to be my favorite. I'm giving it extra points because at the end of the day, it's still Jenn's list. So a few of the books I just am like, you get all the points, right? And some of them I'm like, well, I still like this. I would probably still reread it, but it's not in the top 10. So the books that get my honorable mentions, which I still love and I still will recommend with all my heart, I'll share those just real quickly. So The Duke Gets Even still teared me up. This one did go down to 5 stars for me, but I still liked it. Both, let me double check actually. Yes. Both Powerless and Reckless. I still love Elsie Silver. I still love Chestnut Springs. These ones didn't stay at 6 stars for me just because I do feel like the series started to try to get a little too sensational. I still am very moved by her writing. I think she still writes a very snappy, quick book. But you know what? Heartless was the epitome of everything. I mean, that was my favorite book last year. So when I went into these books this year, I was predispositioned to love them the mostest. But they have fallen just a little bit in my eyes as we went along. Minx by Sophie Lark, still really loved this, but I do think that a lot of stuff was rushed through this story, and though it was an erotic romance, and I still love what this book has to say about BDSM and some of the things to do with it, it just didn't, like, there are just a lot of wacky things in this book as well, which I love some bonkers books, so it's still 5 star, but it doesn't hit the same way as this top 10 will. Return to Monte Carlo by Kate C. Wells. This one is still, like, this is a 5 star read for me still. This was one, it was a novella. I read it very late at night and I binged the whole thing, so I was on an emotional high when I first read it. Upon reread, it is still very angsty, good, marriage in trouble situation. I really liked that. But it was just missing a little bit of the, like, staying power once I knew how it all played out. But still, of course, very good. Then Hyacinth by S.M. LaViolette. This is another one that it didn't quite wow me as much this time around, but I still love Sylvester, the hero in this one, so deeply. I just adored him. I just don't think that, like, the story, like, held up as well. There are just a lot of plot conveniences and a lot of things we're having to ignore, and that doesn't mean it's bad. Again, I can read a bonkers book and just go along with it, but what I'm looking for in my top books are that if it's bonkers like that, that it holds itself there. So those are all ones that didn't stay at 6 star, but I still love. They'll still show up in lots of videos. And then I have 2 that are still 6 star, or 3 that are still 6 star but didn't, like, make the top ones. I forgot to grab it off my shelf, but there's Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing is one that the reading experience is amazing, and I will totally understand if it's on plenty of people's top reads, but for me, I still needed the romance to be as epic as the story, and I think part of it is just, like, we haven't seen the full arc of Xaden and Violet yet, so I don't know, and, you know, are a lot of things about this plot and stuff that don't hold up quite as well when you reread it, and for plenty of my friends it didn't hold up the first time that they read it, but I'm not going to rate it less than a 5 star, but it doesn't quite hold up to the 6 star rating for me upon reread. But I'm loving this series and I'm in it. I liked Iron Flame as well. Then of course Grim and Barrett by Juliet Cross. This was so hard not to have in my top 10. It really was, but I mean, last year I had like 2 of her books in my top books as well, and the series was fantastic. This does have just everything is buttery sweet, or sugary sweet. Buttery, I like butter added in with my sugar, but it just didn't like, well, this one's still a 6-star, but I just mean it doesn't like wow me to my core. It's more about the nostalgia of the series that had this one a 6-star, and I don't fault it for that. I love this family. I love these characters. So this one was a very close, this was hard to cut this one just because she always writes favorites. But yeah, this still a 6-star book, and I revisit those. It's like coming home when I reread a Stay a Spell book. They're fantastic. And then the final runner-up for this was Here With Me by Brooke Montgomery. This is another one that it was hard to cut because I kind of really wanted a cowboy in my top 10 just because I love it. But yeah, this was an ex-boyfriend's dad. I've talked about this one so much, so we're going to get to the top 10 with this. But this one just, it was a tough cutoff for this one. I had a lot of ties as it was. But I just love this. I can't wait for the next one in the series. This one held up really well, especially when I was listening to the audio this time. That's what I did with a lot of these. Like, if they had an audio and I didn't read it that way the first time, I did the second time because I find that it improves the story quite a bit. So, without further ado, 30 minutes in, let us get to the top 10 of my... Okay, so the first books I want to talk about is actually a trilogy, but there was 2 books in the series that I gave 6 stars, and I rated them kind of together since it was the reading experience as a whole that made it 6 stars for me. So we have The War of Lost Hearts by Carissa Broadbent. Specifically, the 2 books that were 6 stars was Children of Fallen Gods and Mother of Death and Dawn. So this series follows Tasana, who is a slave at the beginning of this, and she's trying to buy her way out of it, and that's in the first book. Sorry, we have to start there to explain it. And she is basically beaten and almost killed by her master, who she was trying to buy herself from. He's just completely flabbergasted that she would have the gall to think that even if she'd earned the money to do it, that she would be able to leave him. And so she gets smuggled out by a different slave, and she makes her way to, I think they're called the Order, who she has a little bit of magic, or what she thinks is a little bit of magic, and they agree to help her free other slaves if she will work with them and learn about a certain power that can help her. And she ends up meeting Max, who is a bit mysterious at the beginning. He's grumpy. He ends up being her mentor. And he's very reluctant to help her. He's like, you don't know what you're getting involved in. You don't want to be involved in it. He's a very broken hero. He's had some very tragic things happen, but he can't help but be pulled in by Tasana's optimism and light, even though she has lived through some horrible things as well. And so there's a slow burn romance with them in the first book. But as we get into Children of Fallen Gods and Mother of Death and Dawn, we get introduced to another POV that I don't want to like spoil how it all works for you, but we end up having these 2 like parallel stories that are going, and I was absolutely shook by the way that Carissa Broadbent told this story, the emotion she pulled out of me, the anxiety I felt about how this wasn't going to work out, and it really leads to like why I need fantasy romance. This is exactly the example, because I was like, I know this has to end well, but I don't know how it can end well. And I won't say I wasn't heartbroken. I won't say I still wasn't devastated, but I do think it at least left us in a like good place with it all. Like, it was a very powerful series. This does rely very heavily on the fantasy, but unlike how I think with Fourth Wing, which they're completely different stories, obviously completely different, I felt that Max and Tasana's bond and who they were together, like, they wouldn't be who they are without the other person. And so that made, even though this wasn't the spiciest fantasy romance, I think the romance in this fantasy romance was extremely deep and extremely well told, and these characters were just beautiful. All right, number 9 is a fan fiction, and I'm so happy that this arrived before I filmed my video. So this is In Silence and Submission by Jillian Eliza. This was a book that I became aware of by someone else posting about on Instagram. If you love fanfics and you're not on Instagram, I think you need to get it. You need to get there, because there are some fantastic there's some fantastic creators on Instagram who post some of the best recommendations. So this one got recommended to me, and I read it in July of this year, I believe. Yeah. And this, of course, is a Dramini. This is one that's focused on BDSM, but unlike, let's say, wow, I just forgot the name, Contradictions, this one is a friends to lovers, but it does have a Hermione who has PTSD. She was in a bad relationship with Ron, and she's just been really struggling. And near the beginning of, well, in the beginning of this book, she begins to have a panic attack. And Draco, they are all out for a friend's dinner, and he notices her start to have this panic attack, and he actually, like, puts his hand on her thigh, like, under the table, and he's like, calm, you can do it, just calm down. And he uses a Dom voice on her, basically, and it actually helps her. And later on, he apologizes to her for, you know, kind of doing some BDSM on her without her consent, but he's like, you were just in so much pain, I wanted to help you. And she's like, actually, I'm very interested in this, please teach me more. And so this is also a great book for beginners to BDSM, like if you're a fanfic but you haven't read BDSM, or you are BDSM but you want to try some fanfic, I think this one's great. It's not as intimidating as a Manacled or Breath Winds and Battle Scars or The Auction. Like, it's not as intimidating. It isn't even super dark. This one is this one is just a little over, like, novella length. And it was just so powerful to me. The way that they discuss, like, you know, how BDSM can help, and, like, what subspace can do for you, and what letting go of control can do for you. That's everything that I want in a BDSM romance. Plus, this Draco was swoony AF. It also had some kinks that I really love, including cock warming, including a more of a, like, dynamic that gets pushed out a little bit, but it's not like a master slave or overly intimidating. But, you know, when Draco and Hermione discover how much him, like, leading and guiding and them doing this dynamic helps her, they start to expand it out to encompass more of their lives as well. And I was so moved by it. It was fantastic. And this is the type of fanfic that when I read it, I'm like, dear God, I wish this part of it could be taken and put into a contemporary romance somehow, because it was fantastic. So definitely check it out. This art is by one of my favorite. This is by, I can never pronounce her name, Ellie Viren. She's done the covers of a few of them that I have. All right, number 8 is Contempt by Sam Mariano. This is book 3 in the Coastal Elites. This is a part of her ongoing series, so it's not done yet, but each book is about a different couple currently, although, so you don't have to read Even If It Hurts if you don't want to, which I don't love Even If It Hurts, so I understand if people don't want to read that one, but you should read number 2, which is kind of a novella and is about Parker and Landon's parents, and it explains how we end up in the predicament we end up in here, which is them kind of being step-siblings. Their parents aren't married yet, but they've moved them all in together, and Landon has been Parker's bully for like 5 years now. She has liked him a lot of that time that he's been bullying her, but things didn't go too far until one night at a party a little over a year ago when Landon is drunk. He gets drunk quite a bit in the beginning part of this, and it's really hard to see, but Landon's dealing with a lot of grief. His mother died in a very tragic way, and his father and him, that's when kind of this divide happened. And Landon's dad wants to be a good dad. Again, that novella called Undertow is about Hayden, and her name just went out of my head. I can't remember it, but the parents is what that one is about. And he realizes that he's let things slip with his son, and he's kind of gotten to this point, right? So Landon is only too happy to have Parker within his grasp, and she can't escape. Because here's the thing, even though Parker is told if he steps out of line, he's out of here. Like, it's more important to me that you feel safe and protected. But Parker doesn't want to ruin things for her mom. And she knows that her mom will feel obligated to leave Hayden if it's too uncomfortable for her. And Landon knows this, okay? And he's a very uncomfortable boy, all right? And he's been obsessed with her for a very long time. And in typical bully fashion, he's not handling it in a kind way. He's very pushy about it, we'll say, to put it lightly. And now that he has her within his grasp, and he also realizes that she's not going to tell on me because she doesn't want to mess things up. So he now feels like he has access to her in all ways Now, the thing that makes this work, and I'm not just a psychopath smiling because he is going to push himself on her, is that not only did Parker like him before, he did go too far a few times and she's like, I don't feel comfortable with this, but she also does love his dedication and obsession about her. And when we get to the turning point of this book, and Landon is finally like, you like that I'm forcing you into this because you want a man to prove that he won't be shaken. All those other boys who tried to court you, I scared them a little bit and they ran away like little puppies. He's like, you want a man who's going to make you be with him. And he's right. He's right. So I am just always a sucker for San Mariano, okay? This, I'm not saying this is her like very bestest, my favoriteest one. I mean, Untouchable is always going to be up there, okay? And I'm not even comparing Landon to Carter. Completely different situations, 100%. But the quality she does always keep is that obsessive man and the different ways it can come out. Sometimes it's more psychopathic than others, okay? Sometimes it's more non-consensual than others. Most of the ones in this one lean more towards dubious consent because Parker, there are times where he absolutely is not letting her go. But there's also a lot of times where she likes it. So if you don't want those kind of scenes, then by all means, stay away. But this made it into my top books of the year, as well as another one we're going to see that has that, because I'm a dark romance lover. I like when the men push their partners this way and force them to see them and force them to examine parts of themselves that explain why they are into this, okay? And that's not going to be for everybody, all right? But this is the Book Refuge, and we stan dark, twisted boys here. Number 7 was my last-minute addition to the list. This has happened every year that I've done it now, so it's not like I'm surprised. I mean, I'm still reading new books through the month of December. I just also am fitting in all of these rereads. And I was holding out that this one might make it on the list because this series had been building and building for me. And I was expecting good things. And damn it, if Rena Kent didn't pull through. You're going to see this on a lot of people's favorites lists, especially people who love Rena Kent. I was a very recent convert to her. I've shared my journey about this, but I'd read Rena Kent in years past. I'd liked some of them, but for the most part, she wasn't my favorite dark romance author. I'd read some of her mafia. I'd read some of her other like mafia adjacent, and I was just like, meh, these are okay. But at the beginning of January, for my first books of the year vlog, which I'm actually doing one of those right now as well, it's taking a little while to get through it, I read God of Malice, which was book 1 in the series. This one is book 5. Books 1 through 3 were all out when I jumped on the series, so I did have to wait for book 4, which was Landon and, I forgot her name off the top of my head. Let me look. Landon and, Mia? Landon and Mia was the book before this. And then God of Fury, this is Brandon, who is Landon's twin brother, and Nikolai, who is Mia's older brother. Okay, so this is the brothers of the brother and sister are together. So this is also Rena Kent's first MM romance, and it is a dark romance. This one has lots of triggering content, okay? I talk about it in my original review of this one, which was just a couple weeks ago, right? I read this at the beginning of the month. This one has self-harm. This one has some dubious consent. This one has sexual assault of a minor. There's a lot in this, you know, but it's a dark mafia romance. It's a dark academia type style thing. Like, you're in for it, okay? You're in for it. And also we have Brandon, so Nikolai is the one in this one. This is Nikolai on the cover of this. He is a mafia prince. And Brandon, he is... Oh, he's so hard to explain. He's so hard to explain. I love him so much, but it's so hard to describe him in like a quick type of wrap-up scenario. It's just so difficult. But he is what we would say he's more subdued, maybe uptight, people would say, very reserved, because he's the like cooler head of the twin scenario. Okay, so Landon, we've known he was crazy. We've known that he just wants chaos to reign wherever he goes. We've seen him in the previous books, like he gets into fights with, he's had fights with Nikolai, he's had fights with, you know, because there's a rivalry kind of between these two colleges. That's what this is. They're the wealthy elite colleges. This is a Legacy of the Gods, by the way. I don't know if I explained that. These are all children of the other series she has. So they all have these attributes of like their parents, and they have these attributes of, you know, wealth and privilege and power. So they can kind of take whatever they want. But Brandon's always kind of seen himself as like the lesser of the two of these twins, and he's, you know, tried to be good because his brother wasn't. But there's a lot of pain that Brandon is hiding, and there's a lot of things he's keeping buckled in. He feels very like asexual at the beginning of this to himself and to us. Like that's kind of how he feels. He's had girlfriends before, but he's had to force it every time. He's never felt a sexual attraction for anyone, man or woman. So he's felt very like asexual to this. And then he catches Nikolai's eye, and Nikolai is like, I want to mess up this perfect, preppy, rich boy. And he's not thinking that in a, like, Nikolai's a rich boy too. He's a bad one. He's a bad boy, right? And, oh, my sweet baby. He's like, I just want to mess them all up. And Nikolai's bisexual. He has always been very comfortable with his sexuality. He's been with men, been with women, but he's never really been serious with anyone. He's just been pretty sexually like fluid with whoever, you know, he's like, whoever it is, I'm fucking them. So I can appreciate that about him in a lot of aspects as well. I'm like, I love it. Equal opportunity fuckboy. All right. That's what we say. But when Brandon, you know, of course, he's never looked at a man before. He's like, I'm not gay. I'm not into this. But he's what I call a Nikolai sexual. That's what we see. Nikolai finds what makes him tick, and he pushes those buttons. And, you know, at first it's almost like he wants him to be a conquest. Also knows that it would piss off Landon if he did. Like, there's these different reasons he's going for Bran. But very quickly it becomes that, you know, Brandon fits into the places that Nikolai is missing. And he finds Brandon to be the soft place that he needs. And, you know, yes, there's a lot of tension and a little bit of dubious consent and a lot of like harshness in the beginning of their relationship, because Brandon's not just going to lay down and take it to start. He's like, I am the son of someone important, and like, I'm not into guys, and like, stay away from me. And so Landon's a bit of a stalker, Nikolai's a bit of a stalker to start. And there's a lot of stuff going on because, like I said, this book is taking place at the same time as some other ones. So we've seen scenes of this. We've gotten the hints that these two are together through the other books. And now we're getting to see the full story of how long these two have actually been dancing around each other and, you know, actually had a relationship and then broke up, and then their siblings are together, and how is this going to happen, you know? So I've talked enough about this one. I'm so sorry, but I just can't tell you how shocked I was by Rena Kent this year. There is still plenty of her books I haven't read, so I'm not judging her completely off the ones I didn't like. She was just an author that I was like, I don't think she's going to be for me. I'd read, you know, 7 or 8 of them. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But I'm so glad that God of Malice got picked as my second chance book for her, because I would be missing out on one of my favorite series that I read this year. And there's still one more book to come. It's not supposed to come until like September of this year. But this series has been so epic, and this couple, the pain that they go through, but the triumph is so much greater. So this is one that I sobbed at parts of this. The audiobook is duet narration. You should get yourself that, okay? All the audiobooks are great. The first 3 aren't duet because she hadn't tried that yet, but books 4 and 5 are. And Shane East, he's the guy in both of those, right? Because he's the twin. So he's Landon in that one, and then he's Brandon in this one. And the way he's able to make them so distinct still, even then when they're like in scenes together, and like, I immediately know who's who with just a couple words out of his mouth. He's fantastic. And Shane East said this was like the most emotional book that he read this year. And that's high praise in my opinion. Number 6, I will talk quicker about this one because it's not as in-depth as some of these other ones. But now we're entering our single parent part of the chat. Although she doesn't have to be a single parent. really at all, but we have a pregnant heroine in the beginning of When the Earl Met His Match. This is book 4 in the Wedded by Scandal series, and this is the one I said you can read this out of order. When I read this series, I love Stacey Reed. Some of her books have kind of been in my favorites of every year for the last like 4 years. I adore her. I was able to interview her last year, which was also fantastic. She is a gem, an absolute gem. But this is book 4 in the series, and I had read books 1 and 2, and I wasn't a fan, but I had heard how good this one was, specifically from Ava, Ava Reads Romance. Is that hers? I think that's her channel now. I forget what it is, but because this hero is speechless. He can hear, but he uses sign language. He can't speak. And I had heard how great it was. So I ended up skipping book 3. I went back and read it later because it is about her brother, even though I hated her brother in this book because he does some stuff that makes my blood boil so bad. But he's great in his book. But this one is Lady Phoebe, and she ends up getting pregnant by someone she wants to be with, or she thinks she does. And then when her father offers the man money, he leaves her. He doesn't know she's pregnant when that happened, but like he leaves her and takes the money instead. And when her parents find out she's pregnant, she overhears that her mother wants her taken to a mother's home and the baby given to a baby farm when her baby's born. And so Phoebe is like, no way. Not happening. She's not able to get a hold of her brother right away because he is on honeymoon with his new wife from the first one, and she doesn't want to bother him, and she doesn't have time to wait for him. If her mother is going to take her to this place, she won't be able to contact anyone, and she's going to lose her baby. So there happens to be this man that she doesn't know his name, but she's been exchanging letters with him after he put an ad in the paper looking for a wife, but he had all these weird qualifications, and she was like, this dude's a nut. So they've been writing back and forth, and when she gets into this situation, she's like, oh man, this guy's looking for a wife. She doesn't know he's a lord, that he's titled, that if she tried to pass her baby off as his, she would be giving him a bastard, like lord, you know, or a son or a daughter. She just is desperate. And so she goes to him, doesn't even wait for his answer whether he wants to marry her or not. She shows up, and Hugh, though he says he doesn't believe in fate, he immediately feels drawn to her, and all those little sparks he was feeling from their messages, he's in for it. Now, when she finds out he is a Viscount, I think at the time. His father's the Earl. His father's alive at the beginning of this. His father's the reason he wants to get married before his father passes away. His father's very sick. But his father had married for love, and she had left them. And actually, all 3 of his children are believed to be bastards. He's pretty sure. But he loves his 3 children. He adores them. And though he's very grumpy and you can't tell it, like, he wholeheartedly loved these children because he did love his wife, even though she abandoned him and has cheated on him. Like, he loved her. But it has left him very bitter about love. So he tells his son, don't marry for love. Marry a woman with position in society who's going to help you and your siblings ease their way in, because there's a lot of rumors about Hugh being a bastard. Like, people know it. Because guess what? His mom isn't dead. She left the dad, and she is she's with her lover somewhere else, and people know it. But anyway, Phoebe shows up, and she tells him, she's like, I'm pregnant, and I didn't know you were titled. I thought you were like a merchant who I could, you know, use my family like influence to help you, and that this wouldn't be me tricking you. And she's like, I can't let you have your child be a bastard. And he's like, no, I want to help you. And it's so beautiful because after, like, it really sinks in with him through this book that his father loved him and he wasn't his blood father, and he doesn't call anyone else his father. He doesn't care. So why can't he love a child that isn't his, you know? And it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And also then, like, Phoebe learns sign language to communicate with him, and he does definitely try to keep himself from loving her, but good luck to you, Hugh. It doesn't work. So yeah, this is my number 6. Number 5 is the next single parent on my list, and the second book on this list. You and Me by Tal Bohrer. Guys, if you haven't read a Tal Bohrer, whether you've read romance or not before, okay, I'm telling you, if you've been curious, but you're not sure how you'll feel, whatever, you must read Tal Bohrer, okay? Like, I have read this twice because I read it then and I just reread it. But then I was just transferring the notes because I keep a copy for myself, right? That's annotated, and then I transfer those to the copy for the patron. And I cried just transferring the notes because it's so fucking beautiful, okay? So this one, we have two single dads actually, but this one is a first person POV. It's actually the only one of his I've read that's first person. All the other ones are third person. But this one is about Luke, and his son is 16, 17. He lost his wife a year ago. She died due to a drug overdose, but his son doesn't know that. She also left them in a lot of debt, but his son doesn't know that. And he is achingly longing to have his son love him again, because that wife, we don't want to speak ill of the dead, but she really wedged herself between Luke and his son. He made his son think his dad didn't care about him, and so he's felt very separate from his dad. And then after the mom dies, there's just this chasm between the two of them that can't be fixed easily. And Luke is at his wit's end, like the despair that he feels. Like, before there's ever a romance in this book, this is about a man wanting his son to know he loves him and wanting to feel that love back from his son. It is the purest, most beautiful love ever. And so, like, honestly, I'm not a parent, okay? Like, we know this. But if you are, I feel like this will wreck you even more because it's just, oh, it's so heartbreaking. So Luke begins this book. He's going to a booster club meeting because his wife was kind of, either way, she got stuff from the booster club, and he gets this asking for the wife who's dead to come be a part of it. And he's like, they must not know my wife is dead. So he shows up and he's kind of meaning to explain, like, hey, yeah, I'm a widower now. Like, my wife won't be doing this. But then he ends up volunteering, and he meets Landon Larson, who his son is kind of the star of this football team, a high school football team, and he is just immediately really welcoming to Luke. And it is known that Landon's gay, like everybody knows, and they all love him because he's like the team dad. And with his son being like the star of it, like the son is like, nobody will pick on my dad. Like, I can't. There's a line in here that Landon tells Luke about when he told his son he was gay. His son had ended up like punching a kid in the face who'd said mean stuff about his dad. And he told his dad, is like, don't worry about the meanies because I won't let anything happen to you. I can't. It's so good. It's so good. So anyway, I love Landon's son so much. I love Luke's son too, but I love Landon's son so much because he's best friends with Luke's son. And so Luke is like, doesn't know any of this because his son doesn't talk to him, but Landon knows like who Luke is. And he's like, yeah, our sons are best friends. Like, that's so cool. Like, do you want to volunteer? And Luke like is like, I don't think my kid will want me to, but he just kind of gets swept up into it. He doesn't have anything else going on. He's depressed. He doesn't really have work friends. And so he agrees. And him and Landon now form this friendship. And that's what we see for the first half of this book, is him slowly worming his way back into his son's good graces, slowly starting to feel like a dad again, and just the acts of service he does for his son, where he's like, he won't talk to me, but damn it, I'm going to make sure his laundry's done. I'm going to make sure he has all the protein shakes and milk and chicken that he needs. And that's how I'm going to show I love him. Like, he shows his love language through that because he's, number one, too scared to talk to his son. Like, he is. He's afraid his son will, like, reject him, and he just can't take it. He can't. But it's so beautiful, you guys. It's so beautiful. I know I'm kind of making it sound depressing. I know that. But it starts that way, and you see the depths of defeat and despair that he's in. And then when he has this friend, and he starts to build up his relationship with his son, and he knows that a lot of that's due to Landon helping him and smoothing the way. Like, Landon and his son both, like, smooth the way between Luke and, I just forgot his name of his son. I think it's Bennett. Is Bennett his son? Yeah, I think Bennett's his son's name. Yeah. Or is that the other kid's name? Dang it. No, I forgot. Emmett. It's Emmett. That's what it is. Sorry. And it's so beautiful to watch the restoration of that relationship and then watch Luke fall in love with Landon, because that's what this is. And these two single dads who have never fully felt the love they wanted, because Luke and his wife, they were together because of an accidental pregnancy to start with. And, you know, he loved her, but he wasn't in love with her. And so Landon is the first love of his life. And it is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Absolutely fantastic story. Highly recommend this. Again, this one's a complete standalone. You can read just this one. I'm currently reading The Jock and then The Quarterback. Those two are like in the same series. But this is a complete standalone. It is absolutely wonderful, but it will hurt you. So just be prepared for that. We are to our top 4. So, all right, now we have one that it breaks my heart that it is not available in print anymore. It is out of print. And if any of my friends are bookbinders and would be willing to make me a copy of this one, you'd have my heart forever if you did this. But my number 4 for the year is another single parent and another pregnant single mother. And that is Worth the Fall by Claudia Connor. This was another one recommended by a viewer. And you know, the cover wasn't necessarily doing anything for me, but when I read the description about it, I was like, oh, okay, I know why this person recommended it. So we have our heroine, Abby, who, we'll start from Matt. So Matt is a Navy SEAL, and he currently is on like a forced couple-week break because he got a little bit hurt on a mission. Not badly at all, but they're like, dude, you need to take a couple weeks. So he's went on a vacation with his cousin who showed up at his house and was like, go to, I think they're in Virginia Beach. I don't know, but they go to a resort and they're staying there. And his cousin is trying to hook up with girls, and there's a girl for Matt, and Matt's just like, don't really want to just sleep with this person. I would rather be with my men working, but he's there. And when he is at the beach one day, this little boy hits him with a little foam football. And then he tosses it back to the kid, and then the kid throws him at him again. So he ends up playing catch with this little boy. And the little boy's, he's like, where's your mom and dad? He's like, there's my mama. And he sees this stunning woman who looks to be about 5-6 months pregnant. And he's like, oh, she must have a man somewhere. And she has 4 little kids. She has 4 kids. The oldest being like 6 years old, okay? And she's pregnant again. And through a little bit of discussion, because he ends up spending this whole week with them. He's supposed to be there with his cousin, and he's like, he just keeps being drawn to them. So he meets them when they have lunch one day, he goes to the pool with them, he goes to the beach with them, and all of the kids just pile on him and love him. And Abby's kind of like, you do not have to spend your vacation with me and my kids. Like, this is crazy. But he's like, I want to, with not too much else said. You know, she just feels like she can trust him, and he is falling for these kids. It's beautiful. But he soon discovers she's a widow. She's still wearing her ring. So he thinks she's still married, but she's a widow, and very recently. Her husband only died like 6 months ago, and he didn't even know she was pregnant. But things were already kind of on the downhill with them, and even her being pregnant had been from kind of like a last desperate attempt to try to make things work between them, and it wasn't, and then he died. So she's been left with 4 kids and a 5th on the way, and she is now a single mom. And to go on top of that, she is an orphan. She'd been a foster care kid. She had been through many homes. She never had a stable place. So she doesn't have any family besides a few friends. So she doesn't have anyone to lean on. And Matt, he's from this completely over-the-top full family. I think there's 5 kids in the family. There's 4 brothers and a sister. I believe that's where there's 5 or 6. I can't even remember how many are in this family, but he is from an overloaded family. So he's very used to actually the dynamic of the little kids. But Abby is just like, she doesn't want to depend on him. And they, you know, are seeing each other for these few days that they're there. And he's like, you're going to go back to your life. Like, you are still active duty military. I'm going to go back to my life with my kids. I don't want to like you and feel the pain of being left. And that is a theme in this book, is that Abby fears like someone leaving her. And the way that Claudia Connor shares it, it's not the kind of irrational fear that can be kind of annoying with heroine or heroes who have abandonment issues. She legitimately has been abandoned over and over again. There's some dark stuff about how her parents died. We'll save that for you if you read it. Trigger warnings for stuff with that, though. She had been passed around from home to home, including a family who she thought was going to adopt her, but then they moved to China, and so she had to go back into the foster system to marrying her husband because he wanted her because she was the prettiest girl he'd seen, but he wanted her to be his trophy wife. He was cheating on her the whole time, even though they had all these children. So she has only been abandoned continually. And so for Matt, even though he is like so into her and these kids, this is so beautiful because he is equally falling in love with her and the children at the same time. Loves them so much. But he's going to be continually leaving her because he's active duty military in a very dangerous job for it. He's a Navy SEAL who gets sent into the worst of the worst. So for Abby to reconcile, being married to a man who is a hero, but is going to be leaving her to save other people all the time. Is she able to risk her heart, risk losing another, if they were to be married, risk losing another husband? Like, what would that be, So this book broke me in so many ways as well. I was a sobbing mess. When I reread this one, I listened to the audiobook, I was a sobbing mess again. Matt is a hero in every sense of the word. Yeah, he's dealing with some PTSD and he thinks he's a bad guy from stuff, but he is a hero through and through, not only for his job and his dedication and the fact that he risks himself for others, but he is such a stand-up good man. We see where that example comes from. He has amazing parents, and his whole family is just ready to take this whole family in. They're like, what? We're doubling how many grandchildren we have? Let's go. I love it so much. And I felt so seen by this story as well. I've shared many times. It's why it comes up for books that are my favorites, but found family is my bread and butter, guys, because I live it. I have great parents. I do. But they weren't so great when I was young, and I have become the woman I am because I was raised by my friends' parents, because they took the time. They were at my musical events. They were at my plays. They were at my sporting events where my mom was working hard to provide for me, but she wasn't there for the emotional support of it. And so when I see this type of found family where Abby shows up at something and they don't even know her kids and they're like, we've got Christmas presents for everybody. We can't wait. I can't tell you how it just it speaks to me. It speaks to me. So this is another one that's very emotional, but it is peppered with sweet moments. And the third act conflict for these two, does have to do with her abandonment issues. It does have to do with stuff where you're like, Abby, he's not the same as those other people. But because it's built into her character from the beginning, it's not like it's a surprise, and it's also not out of character for her. But it's also something they have to work through together. Now, as just a quick side note for this one, again, love this. There is a little novella that comes after it that you can buy that is called After We Fell. Is that what it's called? No, I'm probably thinking of that is an after book. But it, because I can't talk. Worth the Fall does end pretty abruptly. It doesn't have an epilogue. It doesn't have that. So she wrote this kind of epilogue. It's about their first year of marriage together after it. So highly recommend that you just get Worth the Fall and you buy that right away because you're going to want to read it. But I've also read the other books in this series, which are about two of his other brothers. And you get the last one takes place even I think it's 6-7 years after this one. So you get to see where Matt and Abby are later. So all these are on AnyPlay. They aren't on Kindle Unlimited though. You will have to buy them if you want it. So that's why I suggest AnyPlay if you want, because these ones aren't Kindle Unlimited books, unfortunately. And you can't buy a physical copy of them either. So it's ebook for $6 a piece or audiobooks for them. Okay. We have another single mother for you. There's still more to come. We of course have to have Forever Your Rogue by Erin Langston. I think I can be concise about this one because I have talked about this at least monthly since I first read it back in June or July. I think I read this one. This is a beautiful romance. This is about Cora, who is recently widowed, and her husband left half guardianship, not to her brother, which would be traditional for the brother of the widow to share custody of the kids, to like help be a guardian, but to his sister and his brother-in-law, who are a greedy bunch of bitches, okay? And Cora's little kids, they're babies. They're only like 4 and 2, or 5 and 2. They're very little. And her husband was very absent. She had her dreams kind of dashed. She wanted this wonderful marriage that was warm and cozy, and she didn't get that. Her husband was very absent. He didn't care about the kids. He'd maybe held them once or twice each. Didn't even know his daughter's birthday. Like, just all this stuff. It was his daughter or his son's birthday. And now she sees herself as like she's free of this man, and she's a widow, so she has a lot of freedom. She also isn't destitute by any means, because not only does she have her widow's portion, but her family had negotiated a good settlement for her too. So it's not that. But what is the threat is that these in-laws don't think she's a fit mother, or that's what they're saying at least. They think she babies the kids too much. They think she's too soft. But I mean, they're babies. And she loves them. So, like, fuck off to them. But the court is on the side of the guardians that they can have them in their possession if they want. I mean, Cora can't do much to stop it. Except in comes her brother, Gavin Sinclair, I think is the brother's name, who I adore. And there is a novella out about him if you'd like to read it. He is a barrister, and he has found some precedent for mothers who have, like, challenged this ruling and got guardianship assigned to someone else as well. But they're going to need to do some stuff to prove to the court why that would need to happen. And so they come up with a scheme that if she were to show that she is planning to marry again, and so the children would have a stepfather, that could help her case, that she would have, you know, someone to, you know, provide the kids with. So there enter Nate Travers, who is a rogue and a bit of a rake and a scoundrel, who is the older brother of one of her friends, Tabby. And he actually owes her. She helped him get out of debt a few years ago, and she needs to call in her marker with him. And so she kind of strong-arms him into being her fake fiance. He's only supposed to do it for a couple of weeks while those relatives come to visit. But very quickly, Nate, who of course is very hesitant in the beginning, he's like, I've never been around kids. I don't want anything to do with this. But once he meets them and he realizes just how much it would break Cora and how bad it would be for the kids to be with these monsters, he quickly gets on board. And not only gets on board to help her and is like, I will stay for the whole, like, I'll do this. He also is like, they both have this amazing chemistry together. They're falling for each other. And he's like, what if we actually try? You know, like, I'm here to help you. I'm going to do whatever I can. But, like, what if we actually try? Like, I like you. Like, this could be real. This doesn't have to be fake. And I just thought that Erin Langston played this story out so well. Cora is a bit insecure at different parts of this, but, like, I understand. She's had her heart broken. She's been facing all these things. She just wants to be a mom to her kids. Like, she's not expecting love again. She's not expecting things to go her way, but she wants to be a mom to her kids. And I just felt for her so much. Like, these people they just want her children for the money. They don't care about their hearts or their souls or what they need. And she's their mommy. Like, she would give up everything else, but she wants her kids, and that's the one thing they want to take, you know? So, yeah, and there's some beautiful parallels in this. There's also another novella that's about Nate's older brother. So he has an older half-brother who was actually his guardian when he was young. And because Nate's been a bit of a scoundrel, his brother's been tough on him, and he's threatened to cut him off. He's threatened to, like, disassociate with him. But his brother loves him so much, and there's this beautiful moment in here. When Nate and his brother have, like, made up, and he's like, I want to be their dad, and he's like, it's a big weight to take on, isn't it? And Nate is like, yeah, but I've had a good example. So good. And then when it's getting all figured out, it's gonna work out, Raymond actually saves the day in this. I won't tell you how, but, like, I'm just saying, like, Raymond helps them. Nate is like, let me introduce you to my children. And I'm like, oh, I can't. And the very, very best line in this whole book is in the epilogue of it. And it says that, like, so it's many years later, one of his children is getting married. So, like, they're all together for this wedding. And he says he had 4 children. 2 he made, and 2 that made him. And he loved them all fiercely, equally, and differently. And that is just to, like, that sums up why I love single parents. I just love that when there's no difference to them. That they're all loved and they're all important. And that for him, like, what I love even more is that those kids, they weren't an accident to the person who chooses to love them. Like, they marry that mom or that dad, and they marry that kid too. And they promise that they're going to love them and be their parent and not treat them any differently than anyone else, you know? And the exact opposite of an evil step-parent, basically. And it's just the best, okay? It's just the best, all right? Okay. Whew, okay. Had to take a minute. Come on, we knew Jenn was gonna cry in this. And if you didn't, I mean, you haven't been paying attention to who I've been. So, what can even be above that, right? There were plenty of times this year where I was sure Forever Your Rogue was gonna be in the #1 spot. But that's why I do rereads. That's why I do rereads and have my little arbitrary scale that I rate them on. Because book #2, again, actually shocks me that it's in #2. Because even when I did the reread, I was like, nothing's going to beat this. Nothing's going to beat this. But I will tell you, between books 3, 2, and 1, this book had 64 points. #2 had 65 points. And the #1 had 67. And this is out of 70 points, by the way. I should have said that. So they were all very, very close to each other. So yeah, in my second place, which again, I'm shocked that it's in second place, is The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. The only one in my top 6 that isn't a single parent, by the way, because there's still another one that is. But this book is going to be on so many people's top lists. That's another reason why I was like, you know what? The same with Heartless. I don't feel too bad that, well, Heartless was my #1, but I mean, the same with like last year where Heartless was a lot of people's favorites. This is going to be a lot of people's favorites. So it doesn't need to be my top spot for everybody else. You know what I mean? But this is a sports romance, a best friend's brother, a roommate, a slow burn, a celibate hero, a heroine who is having infertility issues. She's just been cheated on by her longtime partner and is in need of a restart. So her friend Stevie, who's the heroine from Mile High, asked her brother Ryan if her friend can stay with him temporarily. Because Stevie was living in his place. They had lived they're in Chicago, right? Yeah. They had lived together, and now she is with her partner, Xander, who, again, from Mile High. And Ryan at first is like, no. Like, no, I don't want anyone in my space. Like, you're the only person I trust to live with. Ryan keeps himself very separate from the public eye, even though he is like a team captain of a basketball team and he's very sought after and all the women want him. Like, he has rules. That's why, you know, I did mention, like, he's celibate. He doesn't date. He isn't seen out and about with people. Like, he keeps things private because he's been burned before. And really the only one that he is vulnerable with is his sister. So when Stevie is like, Ryan, it would mean a lot to me. It would make me very happy if you would do this for Indy. She needs this. And so Ryan begrudgingly has Indy move in. But he has a lot of rules for her. He's like, don't bring anybody over. Make sure that you stay clean. Make sure there's that. Like, he has all these rules for her. And Indy is like, wow, you sure are uptight. So it's very like Grumpy Sunshine as well. Indy not only needs to save money up for a place to live, so he does give her pretty like cheap rent, because he's like, the cheaper rent I give you, the sooner you'll move out of my apartment or my penthouse, wherever he's living, his condo, whatever he's living in. But she's also saving money up for an egg retrieval. And this is like a big part of the story because she has an issue with her ovaries and eggs, like, it's explained in here. I'm not going to explain the condition, but basically by a certain age, her eggs will no longer be viable, and she thought she was going to be with her partner and they were going to start trying for kids, so she didn't need to do an egg retrieval, and now she finds out he cheated on her and has left her completely in the lurch, and she needs to retrieve her eggs now if she wants any hope of having babies ever in the future. And she's only 27. I should share that too. She's only 27. So that's kind of like kept a secret from like Ryan in the beginning, but like we know it pretty much from the beginning. And then we just watch this slow thing unfurl. And so there comes a point pretty early on too where this then becomes fake dating, because Ryan is encouraged by the team owner that he wants to see him be more of like a family man, even though like Ryan's not causing any problems. Like, he's not going out and getting drunk or hooking up with people and getting in trouble. But for some reason, like, the team owner doesn't see him as like approachable enough or as like welcoming enough. And he's like, if you had a girlfriend, that would soften you up a little bit. So he convinces Indy to be his fake girlfriend, even though he still has a bunch of rules about how they fake date too. Like, no kissing or no intimacy in public, because it means something to Ryan. She's like, dude, you're gonna have to kiss me in front of people. And he's like, no, I'm not going to kiss you if it doesn't mean anything. She's like, just a kiss. And he's like, it's not. It's all important to him. There's no faking it when it comes to that. And then she needs a fake date for a wedding that's coming up, because all of her friends have kind of taken her ex's side. But she's still invited to this wedding. He's bringing his new side piece, and so she needs one. So Ryan kind of convinced her, like, I'll be your fake date to this wedding. You be my fake date for part of the season until I convince my team owner that I'm great. So there are these different events they have to go to. You know the fake dating, like, you know how it goes. So the sexual tension between these two is boiling very, like, I mean, I'm not saying it's fast. It's not super slow, but like it does really build. And Ryan has a lot of control because he's been celibate for quite a long time now. Again, he has reasons for that, and his reasons are just like, they're heartbreaking. But what makes this book work for so many people? Like, what is it about the right move that gets people? Well, it is Ryan Shea. But I will say, like, upon rereading this, Indy is pretty great too. She's like, he can't be as awesome as he is if we don't care about the heroine that he's doing it all for. You know what I mean? Like, if Indy wasn't worthy of this devotion, like, this book doesn't work, you know? Yeah, like, oh, it's just so good. And why he becomes so swoony is that Ryan pays attention. There's a lot of discussion of love languages in this one. I love whenever love languages show up in books, and Evie's out, or not Evie, I'm sorry. Stevie and Indy, I mix up all these names, but Indy, she is always trying to figure out what his love language is, but he does these very sweet things, like making sure there's cold coffee in the fridge for her to have her iced coffee, and buying a bookshelf for his apartment so she has some place to put her smutty books, and him checking out some of her smutty books to see what it's all about, and him just like, even when he's being grumpy about it in the beginning, he's paying attention to all these things because he's just someone who cares. He does not need to. He is a millionaire, badass basketball player. He doesn't need any of this. But what he does also learn is that he's been doing it as a lone wolf. There's no one but him and his sister against the world. And now that his sister is paired up with someone who, I mean, Xander's more than happy to spend time with him sometime, you know? But he's not meant to go at it alone, especially a man like Ryan who has such depths of kindness and devotion and like deep wells of caring in him. Like, this is the man who, before something's ever happening with Indy, he learns that her dad is deaf. So she knows, she's done sign language her whole life. He takes lessons just so he is able to talk with her dad. None of her friends or her ex have ever tried to learn sign language to talk with her dad. None of them. And before they're ever anything more than fake, he goes about wanting to be able to speak with her dad. And that's the kind of like, just, you know, it's not the bare minimum stuff, right? Like, in so many books, there's that thing of like, they're doing the bare minimum and it works. Ryan is not the bare minimum guy. He's the over the top, I'm going to do everything, you deserve my best type of guy. And that's why I have such a big smile. And this story is so beautiful. And I'm very glad it's getting a traditionally published, even though this is a book for all the happy stuff. We're not talking about any controversies with things or that. We'll save that for a tea video or something. But this is such a good example of a romance that has like all the pillars of it. Like, it has a devoted hero who's a slow burn. He loves way more than just Indy's body. Indy, she's got that quirky, kind of the not like other girl stuff, but she's still so likable. She's a good friend. She calls him on his crap when he's being kind of rude to her. Like, we're going to discuss kind of what makes the difference between this book and the one that I gave number 1 to. And it is that in his trying to put up boundaries, he comes off very rude and almost like hurtful at times. Like, he's not just is like that. He's not cruel by any means. No, he wouldn't work if he was, but he just pushes a little too hard to be like, I need to keep space, and that's just like whatever it is. But it's so beautiful. And then the way that Indy helps him open up to his teammates and helps him work on his like career, honestly, and to let other people in is just really beautiful. Because you do not have to be a doormat to let people in. Although he does help her with not being such a doormat sometimes for other stuff. So this book is absolutely wonderful. And until a couple of weeks ago when I reread this, I was sure this one would be number 1 because it is fantastic. And I'm going to recommend it till the cows come home. It's going on that list of all-time favorites with many of these as well. It's time for my favorite read of 2023. Maybe you've guessed it by now. Maybe you know the book that I haven't shut up about for the last month. Maybe you're one of my patrons or my friends, so you know which book is missing, so it must be that one. But the book that I gave number 1 to, it's the last book that I reread. It is one of the last one. Like, I read King of Fury after this one, but it's one of the last books I added this year. And I just was honestly blown away by this story. And when I reread it, and this is the big thing, this is why there's ones that have an honorable mention and the ones that are up here. When I reread it, I loved it more. And I already can't wait till there's an audiobook for this one and I can listen to it and read it again. And that's when I know that it was up there. So, P.S. You're Intolerable by Julia Wolf. This is book 3 in the Harder They Fall series. Yes, you can read it as a standalone. It's not the same as like King of Fury as a standalone where it's like, no, you should read others for, like, you can just pick this one up and read it. This is a billionaire office romance, and it is a pregnant single mother who is his personal assistant at his company. In the beginning of this book, we have Catherine, who things are going okay at the beginning of it, we'll say. Her and her friend are going to be renovating a home. This is a guy friend. It's also the man who got her pregnant. When they signed the when they signed not the lease, but whatever, when they bought this house they're going to renovate, they had sex that night and she got pregnant. They don't really have any chemistry other than that, but they were drunk and they got pregnant, and now she's 9 weeks along when she goes to this interview. She ends up interviewing with Elliot and becomes his assistant. Very quickly, Liam, the guy she is living with / her friend / baby daddy, he's actually from Australia, and so he needs to go back home because of reasons, and he ends up like not coming back. And not only does he not come back, he didn't pay his part of anything. Kit, that's Catherine's nickname, she put all of her savings and everything she had into this home, and he ditched her. There are contractors who are still owed money. The place is just not finished. So that's just happening in the background of the beginning of this. So once she gets hired for Elliot, it's a tough job. He comes off as sometimes an asshole, but he's not cruel either. And he very much keeps things extremely professional without, in my opinion, being cruel to her. Now, there will be a couple moments in here where you maybe don't agree with me, but once we get to a certain point in the book, you see what was going on in his head when he did those things. And it's more of him, like, I don't think Elliot's neurodivergent, but I just think he's very, like, blunt. And he doesn't, like, explain his bluntness. And if you take it the wrong way, then it hurts. But he doesn't do that the whole time. He definitely grows But anyway, Elliot hired her as his assistant. He's a tough person to stay an assistant for. And one of the ways that Catherine gets her little rebellions is she writes out his schedule for him every day, even though he could have it on his phone or on his computer. He likes to see it, you know, and like cross off the things as he goes, which, you know what? I appreciate. I also do that with my lists. I can make them on my phone, but I always write them down. And she does this little thing to get, like, it's how she gets out her frustration. So she'll write everything out, and then she'll say, P.S. I hope your pillow is always warm. I wonder if I have the other copy here. Oh, I don't have the good one stuff. Or she'll say, P.S. Are you really a cyborg? P.S. I hope your socks get wet and you have to wear them all day. So she'll just say these like petty little things, and then she will cut it off and she'll keep it as almost like a little like fortune cookie thing. And she keeps them in her desk and like hides them in there, and then she'll give him his schedule and she'll go off with her day. So like that's her stress relief every day, is to take a petty little dig at Elliot, right? So as it gets closer to the birth of her child, our heroine is also plus size. And if you have had anyone in your life who has had a plus size pregnancy, you know, you probably don't notice until they get to at least like the 5 or 6 months sometimes. That doesn't always happen, but sometimes. And that is the case here. So Elliot has no idea that she's pregnant. And I mean, she didn't have to disclose that to him. It's totally fine. But finally, one of his friends like points out that she's pregnant, and Elliot is like, what? He's never like been around anyone who's pregnant. And also he tries not to look at Catherine, which is a very important clue to how he really feels about her. Because it turns out when we start getting some of Elliot's POVs, he hired her to be his assistant because he thought she had a partner. In her references, it said that she was living with someone and he assumed it was a boyfriend. He doesn't hire single young women to work for him. He isn't supposed to officially say that, but like for him, he doesn't get assistants who are single young women because he just knows that it's not a smart business move to have someone who's going to be flirting with him or trying to get with the billionaire or whatever. And Catherine, he thought, was gorgeous from the first moment he met her. And eventually in this book, we do see from his point of view the first time he sees her. But he liked her and he gave her this job, and he's like, it's safe. She's with someone. It's fine. And very soon on, like, he finds out she's not, but now she's already made herself indispensable to him. You know, even though on his outward side, like, he seems like this stick up his ass boss, and Catherine is, you know, kind of exasperated with him. It's a very good job. You know, he's never inappropriate with her. He's never, you know, besides being like stubborn and like very, you know, detail oriented, he for the most part is a good boss. She just thinks he's, you know, annoying. And so she writes these little things. And when it gets close to her pregnancy, he finally finds out, and he's like kind of anxious because he's like, how am I going to do this without you? He doesn't say it that way. He's more like, well, how soon are you going to be back? And so these things that come across as kind of, she's like, well, I'm going to have had a baby. I'm going to need some time. You'll have a temp while I'm gone. Him asking those things isn't him like, you know, not caring about her body or her mind and stuff. It's he doesn't want to be away from her. And we start to see those things crumble out of him in just these little nuggets. This is a slow burn story. It's not like super, but it's like a 60% slow burn. So anyway, why this book is at the top, I know, but we're getting the full gush for this one. So there's just all these little things, and in the first half of this book, you just fall so in love with Catherine. And I empathized with her so much. Like, I don't have a baby. I'm not a single mom. But I have felt the crushing weight of debt. And I have felt like you're going to go to debtor's prison for it, or you can't handle it. She's living in this ruined house. Only the baby's room and her room and the bathroom are like even livable in this house. She has no money. She still owes money. She can't fix the house to sell it. She isn't connected with her parents anymore. She's completely alone. She doesn't really have anybody except a couple friends from work, and we're not counting Elliot yet. She has a couple friends at work. She gives birth almost all alone. She only has a couple friends. Like, she has no one. Well, after she has her baby, which happens pretty early on in this book, Elliot wants her back. So he starts like sending her emails, and he's seen pictures of the baby, and he learns the baby's name. Her name is Josephine, and she's called Joey by pretty much everyone. Elliot, when I think she's like 7 weeks along, Elliot ends up stopping by her house. There's a reason why he does. He's never seen where she lived. Why would he? And he comes there and she answers the door, and of course she's not prim and proper Catherine. And what is Catherine like? Not only is she holding, or she doesn't have the baby in her arms then, but not only is she, you know, completely disheveled. I mean, she's wearing like a nursing top, which if you've ever seen those, they're not the most supportive things. You think they would be because they're a nursing top. They're not. She's wearing shorts and a tank top, and she's actually covered in tattoos, which he immediately is like, that's hot. And her hair is down and flowing, and she's flabbergasted, and he thinks she's stunning. But he's there to pick something up, and he gets to meet Josephine, and he actually ends up holding her because she's crying when she goes to do something, and this house is in shambles, and Catherine is extremely embarrassed. She is mortified that he's at her house and that he's seeing her. You know, she doesn't have the same warm and fuzzy feelings for him as like he has for her. Like, we've been in his mind. We know what he's feeling about her a little bit, you know? But then when he leaves, he's about to go, he just can't walk away. And so he goes back inside, and there's this really beautiful moment where he's like, Catherine, you can't stay here. It's not safe. And she's like, yeah, we have it. And he's like, I know, but come stay with me. We'll figure this out. I have 10 empty rooms. Come stay with me. So then this becomes a roommate situation, and he moves her into his home, which is this huge mansion and, you know, this wonderful place to stay. And Catherine accepts for Joey. He'll say that. He's like, do it for your daughter. And what I love, and this is the moment where I was starting to get the tingle. Okay, I'm starting to get the tingle when this happens, and that's why I'm going into the details of this, right? Also because this is a much more, like, lesser-known author at this point than, like, a Liz Tom Ford. Like I said, that book is going to be on everyone's list. And this one for me just was so special. So he moves her in, and he gives her such dignity in it. He's not shaming her for having her daughter in a dangerous situation. He's not making her feel lesser. She's feeling some of those things, but he's very much like, just tell me what happened. Tell me why you're in this situation. And we start to see these very soft, beautiful sides to Elliot that, you know, he's very professional at work. Again, he's strict and grumpy, but like, he's not a mean guy, but he also, we've never seen these soft, squishy sides to him. And he immediately is falling in love with Josephine. And these secret tingles he's had for Catherine that he has completely shut down and kept hidden are now starting to flow out of him now that she's living in his home. And so by the time that Catherine's ready to go back to work, they are in a completely different situation than they, not only because they're living together, but, you know, he was able to keep things so separated before, but now this woman just surrounds him all the time. And the way that he cares for her, the way that he sees to every detail, not because she can't do it, which that is a bit of, like, that's a bit of the, it's not a conflict as in, like, it doesn't get us to a breakup point at all, but that's a bit of the conflict of, like, she's like, you're doing too much, you're doing that, and he's like, why wouldn't I? You are vital to me, you are indispensable, and eventually, like, you're the love of my life, why wouldn't I do all of it? Why wouldn't you let me do all of it? So this one, of course, like, it's a bit of the fantasy too. I mean, we love all of that, right? But it's a bit of the fantasy too, where he's just like, let me do it. I want to. I love you. You are everything I'm looking for. You blow me away in every aspect of who you are. Like, let me spoil you. Let me do wonderful things for your child. Like, I love her. I love you. And by the time things boil over to their first, like, sexual interactions, the first time they kiss each other, it's so great. Like, besides just being a good kiss, like, we can tell that Elliot is a lot further along in liking her than she is with him, right? And when she starts having, like, feelings for him, a lot of it comes from, like, him being good with her baby, and, like, that, there's a lot of some, like, breast play that happens in this. And one of the first things is, like, she sees him, like, holding her baby, and she starts getting, like, turned on, and so then her, like, milk starts coming out. And Elliot, I love this tip, because it's always the heroine who does this. So he actually, like, flushes when he's embarrassed or turned on, and I just love it so much, because the first few times it happens, she thinks he's, like, mad, and really he's, like, so turned on by stuff. It doesn't just happen, like, in the sexy stuff. Like she thinks back then to all these times where she's been his assistant and he's gotten like, she thought he was mad and really he's turned on. And there's a scene where he finally tells her like, I don't do that when I'm mad, but I do that when I'm embarrassed or turned on. And she's sitting there like, and he's like, yeah, it's all the times that you're thinking of. It's real. And it's just this like revelation for her that she's like, oh my God, he's been into me for like a long time. And there's so many beautiful revelations in this one. And then like, cause he doesn't understand anything about babies. So she admits to him at one point that like, he's like, she's not crying. Cause when she cries one time, her milk comes in, right? There is lots of breast play and breast milk stuff in this one, just so you know. It's one of the like trigger warning / kinks for this one. So if you're not comfortable with it, it's not enough that you can't just like skip those. But there's one where like when she's crying, it happens. And then it happens another time. And he's like, what's wrong? Like she's not crying. And she's like, well, Elliot, it also happens when I'm turned on. And he's like, oh, okay then. So it's like they both have these things that they just reveal their hearts to each other. So now I'm just like, whatever, I'm just gushing it. This book doesn't have a serious third act conflict to it. It has a third act of like, a lot of this, as I said, is about Catherine. Like, can she accept this like overwhelming love from this man? Like, how will she do that? And the lengths that Elliot goes to make sure she feels like she has power in this relationship, because he's a billionaire, multi-billionaire. She's living in his home. She doesn't have any money. She doesn't have a place to go if things go badly. There are steps that Elliot takes to make sure she has power. And I was like, who thinks of that? Who thinks of that? Even though those are some of the exact issues that happen in billionaire romance. Like, Julia Wolf thought of it. She thought of it. Okay, we got to wrap this up. This one is, so long. But basically, the reasons this book got to the top is it has a lot of stuff I love about The Right Move. A hero who notices the little things. He spoils the heroine. He loves her and her family. In this case, we'll call Joey the family part of it. He is completely dedicated. He removes all obstacles for them to be together. And he starts taking those steps before the heroine even has a clue what the feelings are. The steam in this one was so beautiful. I cried a couple of times. That's always a good sign. Yes, there are some nice, nasty, dirty ones too. But one of the first times they're together, I'll share this, like she is cleared for like sexual activity, but she's kind of nervous. Not only because he's kind of big, they always will be in a romance novel, but also because she just hasn't been with anyone. I mean, obviously since she got pregnant, but also she was drunk and it didn't mean anything. And Elliot just wants to kiss her all night. I mean, he also gets her off a whole bunch that night, but he's like, come here and just make out with me. Like after they put the baby to bed, he's like, just come sit on the couch and make out with me. I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. I just want to kiss you. And it's so cute. Elliot is so cute, you guys. He's perfect. There's not a damn thing wrong with this man, okay? Point it out to me. Point out to me what's wrong with Elliot, okay? I freaking dare you. He's perfect. This book is perfect. Please pick this up. Tell Julia Wolf Jenn sent you and experience this beautiful story. It might not be a 6-star book like it was for me, but if you love single parents, if you love books with pregnancy, if you love heroes who slowly melt for the woman, if you want some good spice, if you want beautiful like found family and caretaking, there's so much caretaking in this, and he has some of his own like doesn't feel worthy parts of him, and there's a really beautiful moment. Like I said, there's no third act breakup in this book, but there is still some like conflict, right? There's still some stuff they have to work through. Elliot is so great at communication also as well, like especially once they're in a relationship. He doesn't let things simmer. As I said, he was very blunt in the beginning, and he would say things that when we're in Catherine's point of view, we're like, wow, he's being kind of a jackass about that. But it's because like he had other reasons for what he said. Once they're a couple, when he says something like that and he notices her feeling weird, he is like, hey, what did I say that was wrong? And she's like, no. And she'll try. He's like, no. Like, just tell me what I said that was wrong. You probably took it a way that I didn't mean it. hell, there's not room for miscommunication when you do that. It's beautiful. Like, she will be upset about something, and within an hour, you know, in the book, it's just a few sentences, but like within an hour, he's like, hey, babe, what did I say that was wrong? Let's talk about it. He doesn't let things simmer. Nothing can get to a boil that's going to explode. So when there is like some conflict stuff here, it doesn't take more than a few pages for him to be like, something feels wrong. What's going on with my woman? I need to figure this out. And he gets to the bottom of it. Then there's a scene where we see him be vulnerable, where he's like, I'm afraid I'm going to lose you. I've lost people. And now it's Catherine's turn to step up. Because this man, for 350 pages, has done nothing but assuage her fears, give her a comfortable place, make her feel secure in their relationship, love her daughter, be a good father to her baby, make plans for their future. He has done that all the way along. And it's not that Catherine's been a slouch. I'm not saying she hasn't deserved him. She's wonderful. But he needs her to assuage his fears. Because this billionaire, for all he's done, for how smart he is, he still has insecurities too. He still has things where he's never had anyone say those things to him. There's this moment where they've worked through the conflict, but he's still having a bit of a, like, he's having this panic attack in the shower, not because they broke up, but because he feared that he'd lost her. They don't, like, that doesn't happen, but he's having this panic attack. And now it's Catherine's turn to calm him and to support him. And she just tells him, she's like, I'm never going to leave you. You're my home. I'm staying with you forever. She's like, I love you, Elliot. I've cared for you for a long time, even when you drove me mad. But I think it started to turn to love when I walked into my bedroom after you let me sleep all night and were holding Joey on your chest. You smiled at me, and at the time I didn't think about it, but later I did. You were happy to see me rested and just happy to see me be holding my daughter. From that moment on, I was always yours. This man is such a caring, kind, and supportive partner, and Catherine has never had someone who treats her that way, and Elliot's never had someone who, you know, besides his sister, who will love him the way Catherine does. So after minutes and minutes and minutes of gushing, if I haven't convinced you yet, I never will. Please check out the links in the description to all of these books that are my favorites. Thank you to every author who wrote one of these stories. Thank you to you guys for watching my channel for the years. Thank you for supporting me, helping me be able to do this full time, and for making this place such a wonderful place to be. So from my heart to yours, I hope you have a wonderful 2024, and I hope we find even more amazing romances this year. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.